Raiders of the Ark is a deck that focuses on Gallantmon. While many players have played Omnimon and Jessamon decks, Gallantmon gets some support in BT12 that elevates its playability. While there are additional components that make the deck more consistent or flow better, the problem ultimately comes down to being a fragile glass cannon. As always, I'll be covering the card by card, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the combos. This deck runs 4 level 2s, 14 level 3s, 11 level 4s, 8 level 5s, 6 level 6s, 2 level 7s, 2 option cards, and 7 Tamers. For level 2s, this deck runs strictly Digimon from EX2. The reasoning for this is because this is the only egg that guarantees you a draw when you attack with any of your Digimon, whether they be Gallantmon, Growlmon, War Growlmon, or Gallantmon. While you could utilize other babies, Gurimon does not proc on all your bodies unless you have specific inheritables. In addition, DP buffs can be useful, but overall your main objective is to try and trash security rather than check them. Starter deck Digimon is situational, especially if the format moves more towards a raise format again and the other Digimon needs 5 cards in your opponent's trash to work. Level 3 wise, the first thing you'll notice immediately is I do not run promo Gallantmon. The reasoning for this exclusion is because, like most linear stacked decks, I want to build specific inheritables. While it does draw cards, my issue is there's no inheritable to back it up. Therefore, I have Gallantmons that can warp Digivolve if my opponent has a level 6 or higher Digimon in play, a Gallantmon that searches for Takatos and a Growlmon or Gallantmon Digimon, and the newest BT12 version that adds all Takato Mitsukis to your hand when you reveal the top 4. Takato plays a crucial role in this particular version of the deck, mainly because it's also your hybrid or blitz enabler. While I do like the plus 2000 DP for Gallantmon, my beef with this card is that you may find your Growlmon and War Growlmon pieces, meaning at times you potentially bottom deck them instead. But the inheritable is totally worth it. The last level 3 I use, of course, is the Gallantmon X variant. While it does not provide protection or search for more pieces, it does have an inheritable that can potentially give you that extra bump to delete Digimon. But when you move to level 4s, there are a wide variety of ways you can play this. In total, there are 5 Growlmons in the red category, including an X variant. Tailored to your local meta to what you need, whether it be deleting numerous bodies in the case of Beelzemon X heavy locals or prioritizing the DP buffs or extra checks. For my variant of this build, I do run the full 4 Growlmons from BT12 for the extra DP buff and the chance to play Takato Matsuki without paying its memory cost. Growlmon X comes in at 3 copies for that extra Digivolution climb in the raise, and 4 starter deck Growlmons for the memory gain. Personally, I don't think a Gunimon is necessary anymore because it can be bottom decked frequently, but your Gallantmon can in essence be a hybrid now in combination with a memory fixer Takato. Not to mention, it gets blitz if you have EX2 Takato out as well. But as I said, you have a variety of cards you could use. EX3 for the extra check if you delete one of your other Digimon, or EX2 for more deletion of Digimon with 3000 DP or less. But not a fan. War Growlmon also comes with a variety of effects. I don't recommend any of the older ones before BT9. Instead, this deck simply only runs 2 BT9X antibody variants because Memory Fixer Takato only works with Digimon explicitly named Growlmon, War Growlmon, and Gallantmon. Don't get me wrong there are elements of the deck that can utilize the X antibody, but to keep it flexible, I actually keep my ratios more on the high side with non-X variants. Because of this, BT12 comes in at 4 copies, and the EX3 variant comes at 2 copies. BT12 offers potentially a cheap Digivolution up if you don't delete something, but the EX3 variant can potentially trash cards off the top that can fill your trash with pieces you need, and also play Takatos for free if you have bio-merged off of them already. But Starter Deck 1 War Growlmon is also viable for the extra security check if you delete one of your opponent's Digimon. Now in terms of testing, the EX3 War Growlmon has burned me once, trashing not 1, but 2 Gallantmons. Let's just say that game went poorly afterwards. For level 6s, Gallantmons also have a number of variety to go with. You could go with OG BT2, especially if your meta is largely Beelzemon or Beelzemon X, because frankly that deck is stupid fast for setup and even can have a huge trash for Beelzemon X by turn 3. But the focus for this deck is going to be BT12 because we're Raiders. Raiders of the Ark. Personally, I wasn't a fan of EX2 Gallantmon because of its focus on DP-based deletion and the starter deck for the fact that it doesn't trash security. While Gallantmon can trash security if when attacking no Digimon is deleted, the X antibody variant can also trash security if it deletes a Digimon. So whether you have the X antibody variant or not, something is getting trashed. Which takes me to the level 7s of the deck, Crimson Mode. If your opponent happens to have 1 or 2 security left and 10 cards in trash, that's just game right there after you attack, because you'll trash the top 2, and your attack connects, especially if you have Blitz Staccato out. Option card wise, the variant of this deck leans more heavily into the Glass Cannon route. No defense, just pure offense. The utilization of X antibodies to go into any of your X forms and have their effects trigger, or in some cases, do some really wacky combos. There are many option cards you could run in red variants, whether you want to utilize Crimson Blaze for wider building boards and or even Gaia Force for specific Digimon removal. Personally, I think the cost is a bit high and ultimately just went with the X antibodies. And finally, Tamers in the form of 3 Memory Fixer Staccato and 4 EX2 Staccatos. Memory fixing is very important, but this Staccato also lets you warp into your Gallantmons as long as you have a Growlmon and War Growlmon in the trash for its Digivolution cost. If you do, it gains 2000 DP for the turn. But in combination with EX2 Staccato, you can also Blitz, meaning this is a pseudo-hybrid for game. EX2 Staccato can also gain you a memory when a Digimon is deleted by suspending this Tamer, value that I prioritize over having 4 memory fixers. Strengths and weakness wise, Gallantmon is missing something still to make it competitive. In Ultimate Cup modified rules, it honestly could be more competitive considering you remove the likes of multicolored decks like Crossheart and even Hunters. Its biggest strength is having multiple Digimon removal built throughout the Digimon lines, but unfortunately my biggest beef with it is the lack of protection, and Guilmon X not being a searcher like Agumon X, Gabumon X, and Kokuamon X. While Salamon does look at the top card of security, Guilmon X joins the ranks of Gazimon X in being a non-searcher of the X line. While you do have DP buffs, it's also a little late considering in one specific matchup against Raid War Greymon, my wife managed to Digivolve into a Metal Greymon X off of Metal Greymon after giving it Blocker, then Raid War Greymon, then Blitz Omnimon. This Blitz Omnimon ripped through all of my security and had 21,000 DP, Blocker, Reboot, and 3 forms of protection on my turn. But this deck's biggest weakness is that if your opponent doesn't have a Digimon in play, the only Digimon that gains value from that is Raid Gallantmon. You don't gain memory from any of your other effects, and you have nothing to raid into. Luckily, your opponent not having anything out is actually better for this raid option because War Greymon wants that extra unsuspended body out to unsuspend. In the different matchup tests, this deck has a hard time against Raid War Greymon, because War Greymon has protection and can get really big. Beelzemon X decks played 60-40, depending on their setup, but at the same time you could delete Impmons for trash effects that set it to their turn sometimes. But cross decks like to leave lots of smaller bodies out, which was very advantageous. Combo wise, the deck looks more at linear building in the raids, climbing up to your Guilmon, Growlmon, and War Growlmon respectively while trying to get your Staccatos out as quickly as possible. When your opponent leaves Digimon out in play, you can now gain value off of this by Digivolving into War Growlmon X to gain additional memory from its effect, and Staccato before going into your Gallantmon. Assuming no Digimon are in play, Gallantmon can trash the top security when attacking. An X antibody evolution can go into Gallantmon X for the unsuspend, and then Crimson Mode for potential lethal. While not one of the best decks of the format, Gallantmon does gain a lot of new support. It's still missing something, but I'll take it for the time being. What are your thoughts on the deck? And what are changes you'd make? Let me know, and again, thank you so much for your support. This is Digi-Panda, logging out.